The ladder cracked under his weight. In the cold March night of 1932, a wooden ladder leaned against the second-floor window of the Lindbergh home in Hopewell, New Jersey. Someone had climbed up quietly, step by step, holding a sleeping child. The night was dark. The house was silent. Then the ladder broke. A sharp snap cut through the air. Inside the house, the baby was gone. 20-month-old Charles Lindbergh Jr., the son of America's most famous pilot, had vanished without a sound. No scream, no struggle, just an empty crib and a deep fear that spread fast through the house. On the windowsill, there was a note. The message was short and cruel. The child had been taken. A ransom was demanded. If the family wanted their baby back, they had to follow instructions. The note was signed with a strange symbol, 2 circles and a third overlapping them with holes punched through the paper. Within hours, the case exploded across the country. Police flooded the property. Reporters swarmed the gates. The kidnapping of the Lindbergh baby became the biggest crime story in the United States. President Hoover was briefed. The FBI was alerted. This was no longer a local case. It had crossed state lines, and the ransom demand made it a federal matter. The kidnappers believed they were invisible. They demanded money in stages, sending more notes through the mail. Each letter was carefully written, filled with misspellings and odd grammar. The Lindbergh family followed the instructions, desperate and afraid. They paid the ransom, $50,000 in marked gold certificates. But the baby never came home. Weeks later, the worst truth was found. The child's body was discovered in the woods, not far from the Lindbergh home. He had died the same night he was taken. The ladder that broke had caused a fatal fall. The nation was stunned. The crime had failed. The ransom had been paid for nothing. But the kidnappers were still free, and they believed they had gotten away with it. That belief would be their greatest mistake. What they did not know was that every ransom bill was recorded. The serial numbers were written down by the FBI and Treasury agents. The gold certificates were rare, and their use was being watched across the country. For more than 2 years, the case went cold. The trail seemed dead. The public began to believe the killer would never be caught. Then, in September 1934, a man pulled into a gas station in New York. He paid for fuel with a $10 gold certificate. The gas station worker noticed something odd. Gold certificates were no longer common. He wrote down the car's license plate number on the bill itself. That single moment changed everything. The plate led investigators to a man named Bruno Richard Hauptmann, a German immigrant living in the Bronx. When agents searched his garage, they found over $14,000 of the ransom money hidden inside. The FBI moved fast. They searched his home. They questioned him for hours. More ransom money was found. Handwriting experts compared his writing to the ransom notes. Wood experts matched the broken ladder to planks missing from his attic.
Piece by piece, the case came together. The man who thought he was untraceable had been exposed by a single careless act. But the trial would not be simple. Hauptmann claimed he was innocent. He said the money had been given to him by a friend who had returned to Germany. The defense argued that evidence had been planted, that the case was rushed because of public pressure. The courtroom was packed every day. The nation listened on the radio. This was more than a trial. It was a reckoning. Witnesses took the stand. Experts spoke. The ladder was rebuilt in front of the jury. Each detail brought the jury closer to one truth. In 1935, Bruno Hauptmann was found guilty of kidnapping and murder. He was sentenced to death and later executed in the electric chair. The FBI called it a closed case, but questions remained. Some believed he acted alone. Others believed he had help. Some even questioned whether justice had truly been served. What was certain was this: the Lindbergh kidnapping changed America forever. It reshaped federal law, expanded FBI authority, and made ransom kidnapping a federal crime. And it all came down to one mistake: a single bill, a gas station, and a number written in ink. But even now, nearly a century later, one question still hangs in the air. Was Bruno Hauptmann truly the only one involved, or did someone else walk away in the dark, never caught? That question leads directly into what happened next. The prison cell was silent when Bruno Richard Hauptmann realized the world already believed he was guilty. Outside those walls, newspapers had decided his fate. Inside, federal agents prepared to tear apart every part of his life. The ransom money was real, the wood ladder was real, the handwriting looked real, and now the FBI was under pressure to prove one thing: how one man could plan and carry out the most famous abduction in American history. But the deeper investigators looked, the more complicated the case became. Hauptmann had been living quietly in the Bronx. He worked as a carpenter. He had a wife and a young child. Neighbors described him as calm, polite, and ordinary. That made the crime even harder to understand. How could someone like this steal a baby from America's most protected home? The FBI went back to the beginning. They studied the ransom notes again, the strange spelling patterns, the repeated mistakes. Some letters were written the same way every time. The misspelled words appeared again and again. Handwriting experts testified that the writing matched Hauptmann's sample pages almost perfectly. Then there was the ladder. The wooden ladder left at the Lindbergh house had been made by hand, not a factory ladder. Each piece of wood was unique. FBI wood experts traced one plank to Hauptmann's attic. A board had been removed from his home, and the grain matched exactly. This was not luck. This was craftsmanship. Investigators believed Hauptmann had built the ladder himself. They believed he had planned the crime carefully. But one question still haunted the case. Why would a man who planned so carefully make such a simple mistake with the ransom money? During questioning, Hauptmann gave different answers. He said the money belonged to a friend named Isidor Fish, a man who had traveled back to Germany and later died. Hauptmann claimed Fish left the money behind, and he did not know it was ransom money. The FBI did not believe him. They traced the ransom bills used across states. Every time one appeared, it brought them closer to Hauptmann's routine, where he shopped, where he traveled, where he felt safe enough to spend the money. This was the part kidnappers never understood. Ransom money talks, even when people do not. The trial began in January 1935. It was called the Trial of the Century. Crowds lined up outside the courthouse in Flemington, New Jersey. Inside, reporters filled every seat. Radio stations broadcast updates across the nation. The pressure was enormous. Prosecutors presented evidence piece by piece: the ransom money, the ladder, the handwriting. Witnesses testified that they had seen a man like Hauptmann near the Lindbergh home before the kidnapping. But the defense fought back. They argued that the case was rushed, that witnesses were unreliable, that evidence had been influenced by public anger. They claimed Hauptmann was being sacrificed to satisfy a nation demanding justice. The courtroom became a battlefield. Charles Lindbergh himself took the stand. When he spoke, the room fell silent. He said he recognized Hauptmann's voice as the man who had demanded ransom during a meeting arranged by intermediaries. That moment shifted everything. The jury watched closely. The nation listened. After weeks of testimony, the verdict came quickly: guilty. Hauptmann showed little emotion as the sentence was read: death by electric chair. To many Americans, the case was over. The FBI had won. Justice had been served. But behind closed doors, doubts lingered. Some investigators privately questioned whether Hauptmann acted alone. Others wondered if mistakes had been made under pressure. Years later, evidence handling would be debated. Witness memories would be questioned, but no appeal changed the outcome. In April 1936, Bruno Richard Hauptmann was executed. The Lindbergh case officially closed, yet its impact was just beginning. The kidnapping forced Congress to act. New laws were passed making ransom kidnapping a federal crime. The FBI gained expanded power to cross state lines and track criminals nationwide. This case became a blueprint. Every abduction case that followed carried lessons learned from the Lindbergh investigation: tracking money, monitoring communication, following small mistakes. But there was one final detail that refused to disappear. Years after Hauptmann's execution, new voices began to speak. Some claimed evidence was ignored. Others suggested a second person helped plan the crime. Files were reviewed, questions returned. Was the FBI right?
Or had the truth been buried with the man they executed? That question would not go away, and it would resurface in ways no one expected. Because sometimes the most dangerous part of an abduction case is not how it begins, but what comes out after the case is closed. And that unanswered doubt leads directly into what happened next. The courtroom was empty now, but the tension of the Lindbergh trial still echoed through the nation. Months had passed since Bruno Hauptmann's execution, yet whispers and doubts lingered. Families across America feared for their own children, wondering if someone like Hauptmann, or someone working with him, could strike again. Even with the case officially closed, investigators couldn't ignore a troubling trail of questions. Some of Hauptmann's neighbors remembered strange visitors, men who came and went late at night asking questions about carpentry work or the Lindbergh family. Papers in the attic suggested more than one person might have been involved in the planning, but those leads had been dismissed at the time as unimportant. Could the abduction have been part of something bigger than one man? Meanwhile, the country had changed. The FBI, emboldened by their success, began tracking other kidnappers and ransom cases more closely. They studied patterns, examined handwriting, traced serial numbers on money, and interviewed countless witnesses. Every new abduction that occurred after the Lindbergh case was compared to Hauptmann's as agents searched for connections that might point to accomplices or copycat criminals. Despite the closure, some pieces of the puzzle remained missing. How had the ladder been built so precisely, and why did Hauptmann risk using the gold certificates at all? Experts argued that the crime showed incredible planning, yet it also contained tiny, careless mistakes. The contradiction made people uneasy. Could someone else have taught Hauptmann, or was he simply reckless enough to leave trails that even experts would follow? The case's notoriety also inspired fear across America. Parents clutched their children, strangers became suspicious, and communities demanded safety measures. Yet every time a new child disappeared, the Lindbergh shadow loomed large, reminding the public that abduction could strike anywhere, even in safe neighborhoods. Federal agencies took notes, improving their methods, making sure that next time there would be no room for error. But one night in 1936, just a year after Hauptmann's execution, a small clue appeared that reopened old questions. Investigators discovered that a few of the ransom bills had never been traced. They had vanished, unaccounted for. Who had them? How had they disappeared? Could they point to a second person involved, someone who had walked free while the world focused on Hauptmann? The revelation sent shockwaves through law enforcement circles. Private detectives and FBI agents started quietly revisiting old interviews, re-examining evidence, and interviewing neighbors who had never spoken before. Some remembered fleeting details, voices, footsteps, even cars that hadn't seemed important at the time. Patterns began to emerge, suggesting that the Lindbergh kidnapping might not have been as simple as it first appeared. While the public moved on, the FBI quietly learned that abduction cases often hide secrets that only appear years later. The Lindbergh case became the ultimate lesson. Criminals sometimes rely on mistakes, but investigations rely on persistence. The one small error, the gas station clerk noting a license plate, had solved the crime.
Yet the untraced bills reminded everyone that in abduction cases, even decades later, secrets can resurface. And so, the files remain open in spirit. Every kidnapping that followed carries the shadow of that March night in 1932. Every investigator studying a ransom case owes something to the lessons learned from the Lindbergh abduction. One man was punished, justice was served, but the story is far from over. Because in the world of abductions, the truth can hide in the smallest details. A misplaced bill, a forgotten witness, a neighbor's fleeting memory. Any of these could unlock answers decades after a crime is thought to be solved. The question that still lingers: was Bruno Hauptmann truly acting alone, or did the abduction involve more than anyone at the time realized? And if so, who else might have walked away in the shadows, leaving a trail that even the FBI would struggle to follow? The files remain, waiting for the next clue, the next witness, and the next chance to uncover a truth that refuses to stay buried. The Lindbergh abduction became more than a story of crime. It became a lesson in human error, federal power, and the relentless search for justice. A chilling reminder that even solved cases can leave secrets that haunt a nation for generations. It was a rainy evening in New Jersey when the final threads of the Lindbergh case began to unravel, not through new crimes, but through the quiet work of investigators reviewing old evidence. Decades had passed since Bruno Hauptmann's execution, yet every few years a detail would resurface, reminding the nation that the story was never truly over. Files that had been tucked away in federal archives were reopened. Handwritten notes, photographs, and witness statements were studied with fresh eyes. Advances in forensic science, which Hauptmann's investigators could only have dreamed of, offered the chance to examine clues that were once dismissed. Tiny fibers from the ladder, traces of handwriting, and even the rare gold certificates themselves were re-examined for secrets they might still hold. Some of the old neighbors came forward, decades later, offering memories that seemed unimportant at the time. A man remembered seeing 2 cars parked near the Lindbergh estate on that March night. A woman recalled a stranger lingering near the property whose description didn't match Hauptmann. These whispers hinted that Hauptmann might not have acted alone, that a second person or even more might have been involved in the planning and execution of the crime. Federal agents also discovered that a few of the ransom bills had never been traced. Even though the majority had been recovered and linked to Hauptmann, some were missing. Where had they gone? Who had spent them? And could those unaccounted for bills still point to accomplices long hidden from the public eye?
Every untraced bill became a symbol of secrets yet to be uncovered. As the files were meticulously analyzed, the chilling realization set in. Abductions, even when solved, often leave shadows. Trails can be buried for decades, hiding the full truth. Investigators realized that every kidnapping in the country could teach them something new. Every small clue might connect to larger networks, patterns, or accomplices that had never been found. The Lindbergh case became a blueprint for how the FBI would approach future abductions, how ransom tracking and meticulous evidence collection could solve crimes that might otherwise remain mysteries. And yet, despite all the lessons learned, one question refused to fade. Was Bruno Hauptmann truly the lone perpetrator, or had someone else carefully orchestrated the crime from the shadows, leaving just enough evidence for Hauptmann to be blamed? Files, bills, and witness statements hinted that someone else could have walked free, their identity hidden, their role unproven. Even now, almost a century later, the story of the Lindbergh abduction reminds us that justice can be served, but truth can remain elusive. It teaches investigators, families, and the public that vigilance matters, that details, no matter how small, can solve crimes, and that mistakes by criminals can both reveal and conceal the full scope of a crime. The Lindbergh Files, preserved in the FBI archives, continue to stand as a chilling testament to human error, criminal ambition, and the relentless pursuit of justice. They remind us that in abduction cases, the smallest detail can change everything, and the shadows of one crime can stretch across generations. The files wait, the truth waits, and in every unsolved or partially solved abduction, the lessons from 1932 remain clear. Follow the evidence, track the mistakes, and never assume a crime is truly finished. Because sometimes the answers are buried in the details, and sometimes they only emerge decades later, in whispers, in hidden files, and in the quiet persistence of those who refuse to forget. This is the story behind the FBI-documented Lindbergh abduction, one of the most infamous kidnappings in American history. A crime that shocked the nation, revealed the power of small mistakes, and changed how the country handled abductions forever. The case shows that even solved crimes can leave secrets in the shadows, reminding us that the pursuit of truth is never truly finished. The question remains, was Bruno Hauptmann the only one, or did someone else vanish into history, leaving their role hidden? The files are still there, waiting for answers, and for those willing to uncover them. Subscribe now.